Good evening, gang. David Goppelt, Thinker Farmer here. Recently, I've been busy and I haven't spent a lot of time indoors in my office, and so I haven't shared a lot of thoughts with the channel as I more traditionally do. Most of the videos have been out in the field. Now that the weather is cooling off, it's getting colder, I'm still going to be working outside, but I'm hoping to share a few more things on the channel that are a little bit more thought-provoking, hopefully, and also a little bit more traditional when you consider the overview of the channel. Several people have joined over the last few months, so welcome to the channel. I haven't thanked you all for joining. I'm glad you're here as part of the team, and hopefully you're finding something worthwhile to take away from the channel. If you're fairly new, you may not know some of the original videos of the Thinker Farmer YouTube channel, so I encourage you to go back, at least watch the one or two of the first original episodes, definitely episode 1 and episode 2, and hopefully get a pretty good overview of what the channel is about. Today, I'm not going to really be covering old information necessarily, but it's going to be more in line with some of the things I've said, even though it's now been, next spring it'll be 3 years since I started this YouTube channel. So what I wanted to talk about today is what I'm going to call a farmer's self-assessment. Essentially, every farmer should have the courage to look himself in the mirror, see who he is, where he is going with his farm or ranch, and assess his identity, because his identity is foundational to everything else on the farm. His identity is even more foundational than his context. And who he is more important than where he is, which is context. And if he can assess that properly, get a good picture of that, he can more or less have control of his farm's vision and the trajectory that it is going to move towards. So, as a backdrop to talking about a farmer, well, let me say this. This is the first in a series of YouTube videos. I don't know how many I'm going to do. And I'm going to essentially ask 10 questions. Today we're going to cover just one question, probably the most foundational of the 10 questions, that is essentially a test for a farmer. These are not a literal test, as you might think of in school, but a test nonetheless for each farmer to ask himself honestly these 10 questions and see how you line up, see where you measure up. So here we go. Introduction. Success. As a farmer, I would tell you that there are 3 qualities from my viewpoint, and every farmer is going to have 3 different questions that matter in terms of your farming success. The first one is, it should be a pretty standard one, something everybody expects. It's passion. Passion, more or less, and I have a cheat sheet. I've got my laptop here because I have a lot of content I want to cover, is something that you either have or you don't. It is your want to. How badly do you want to farm? How badly do you enjoy it? Because at the end of the day, if you don't have passion, nobody can train you to have this. You either have it or you don't. There are people out there. The next quality is very similar to passion. It's dedication. The thing about it is, a dedicated individual can have no passion, and a passionate individual can have no dedication. But if you start with an individual who has passion, hopefully you can train them to be dedicated. Dedication is essentially about your drive to do. How willing are you to stick things out, to work hard, to get your want to where you want to go? There are individuals that have passion, but if they don't have drive, it's not going to go anywhere. But you can usually, I think you see where I'm going. You can overcome an individual that doesn't have enough drive to do if he's willing to learn. You can't overcome a lack of passion. Dedication is something we don't see as much in our culture today. Dedication and hard work ethic are very, very similar. They may not be one and the same, but a person with a hard work ethic, with a good work ethic, I should say, because hard work ethic and good work ethic are not the same thing. And you want somebody with a good work ethic more than you want somebody with a hard work ethic. Anyway, I'm going to roll on through because we're trying to cover ground. Self-awareness. This is a third quality most people probably wouldn't think of. I would emphasize this as much as the other two, maybe even more. Self-awareness means that, as Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People would say, it means that you can step outside of yourself and see who you really are. And that is essentially, this third quality here, self-awareness, is what farmer self-assessment is all about. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and write down the first question. And essentially, the bigger question I'm going to write down in abbreviated form is, as a farmer, do you think about what you can't change or what you can change? Hopefully you can read that. I'm not going to be writing a lot of stuff on the board today. I'm going to emphasize a few words. What can I change as a farmer? This is the essence of critical thinking. Are you the individual that all throughout your day is thinking about what you can't change, or are you thinking about what you can change on your farm or ranch? The illustration of this that's used is a circle of influence versus a circle of concern. Every individual has a circle of influence. That's the things that they can affect and influence in their lives. And usually we also have a larger circle of concern. Those are things that we care about, that we are concerned about. But if you are a proactive individual, you've got to focus on your circle of influence. You've got to be aware of your circle of concern. You can't stick your head in the sand. You've got to be aware of what's happening in the world around you, but your primary focus has to be on what you can change. So I want to give an example or an illustration of this to essentially give you a symptom. If you are an individual that beats yourself up over mistakes you've made in the past, over failures, and you're anxious about the future, you are an individual who is focusing on things that you can't change. And this is a really tough one for me. I'm aware of it personally, but it's a hard thing to change. So I'm going to give an illustration. One weekend at Greg Judy's, it was Greg Judy, another intern, and myself. We had a heifer that did not, it was her first time, and she didn't deliver the calf correctly, and a couple weeks later, she would end up passing. Anyway, the morning that we found the dead calf, we were all pretty bummed because it was a pretty nice heifer, and we were expecting a pretty good calf from her. And so to have the calf lost, it was a Saturday, it was kind of a bum start to the day. And Greg Judy went ahead and stopped the four-wheeler. We had been talking about it for 5 minutes, and we were about to set up some fencing before we called it for the weekend. And Greg Judy said, y'all, 20 years ago, that would have ruined my whole day or even several days. But you can't base your life on what ifs, of what if things had been better. You can only base your life on what is. And I think that underscores the reality. Back to the same question. It's an illustration where we're dealing with a situation, and the past is the past. You can't change it. You need to learn from it, but you cannot dwell on it. Once you have recognized in your mind what you did wrong, it's time to move on. And what I've noticed, because I've visited a lot of farms or ranches over several years, worked a number of different places, probably been to over 50 farms by now, and gotten to see their operations and their setups, is that farmers that focus on what they can't change ultimately allow fear to be the decision driver on their farm. And they're making decisions based on fear. They're afraid of what the neighbors are going to think. They're afraid of what their competitors are going to do. And you can't control what someone else thinks. You can't control what somebody else does. So you're thinking about what you can't change. And what that means is that farmer is focused on things he has no control over, instead of looking at today and saying, I have an opportunity to grow and develop. And the thing about fear is it's contagious. And if you're on a team and you're the leader, you are going to spread your fear to your team. And even though your team is not powerless, you're going to make your team feel powerless if you are fearful, and you're essentially going to be making decisions based on fear, because however you think, that's going to control the very nature of your decisions. But nothing good has ever come from a fear-based mindset. I'm going to say that again. Nothing good has ever come from a fear-based mindset. What makes good things happen is conscientiousness and courageous thinking. That is what will get any man to his destination. The good thing about courage is that it is also contagious. It also spreads. It's a lot harder to have, though, because it requires a lot of patience and a lot of self-control. You can't just let your mind run off like a wild horse. You have to rein it in and keep yourself on a hopeful mindset. So I need to wrap this video up. Again, the first question to ask yourself as a farmer when you're assessing yourself is, do I think more about what I can't change or about what I can change? Because the most powerful tool you have as a farmer, as a grass farmer specifically, since that's what most of us are here that are going to be looking at this channel, your most powerful tool is not parked in a barn, and it is not in a bank account, and it's not even laying out in your pastures. And it's not even precisely what's between your ears, even though your mental abilities has something to do with it. It is your mental resolve to be proactive in your thinking. It's not how much education you have. It's not how, quote, smart your IQ is. It is your mental resolve. It has a lot to do with your will as an individual, as well as your awareness, to be proactive in your thinking. It's your mindset. It's how you approach life. It's how you approach farming. The way my dad explained it to me, he said, if a man thinks he can or a man thinks he can't, either way he's right. You've probably heard me say that before, but what I just shared with you in the last minute is the essence of the Thinker Farmer channel. It essentially believes the belief that successful farming can only come from successful thinking. And with that, gang, blessings for the journey, and keep it real.